I spy, with my little eye, a neighborhood from Kelowna's past with a rich history and stories of hard work and perseverance. This neighborhood is Kelowna's Chinatown. We're going to visit Kelowna's Chinatown today. But how can we do that? It doesn't physically exist anymore. Well, we've virtually brought you into the museum, and behind me is our recreation of a Chinese general store from Kelowna's Chinatown. So we are going to peek into the windows and explore some of the stories from this past neighborhood. Chinese immigration to this part of the world began during the gold rush era of the late 1850s and the 1860s. Thousands of people from all around the world, thousands of people from China came here hoping to strike it rich. Most of the people from China were men who came by themselves with the hope of being able to send money back to their families in China. And this hope and desire was so strong in the Chinese communities that they actually named this land Gam San, or Gold Mountain. Now, when the gold rush dried up, many Chinese laborers found work building the national railway system. And when the railway was complete, many of those people found work in the orchards around the Okanagan. And this is where Kelowna's Chinatown began. You see, the Chinese workers were not welcome into the broader Kelowna society. There's a lot of racism and discrimination there. And so they began their own neighborhood, Kelowna's Chinatown, as a place to find work, as a place to find residence, and a place to have friendships. Now, Kelowna's Chinatown was a part of downtown Kelowna today, and it ran the back alley behind Bernard Avenue. So think about where Moolix is, and the back alley there. And then it was a couple of city blocks up to where the highway is, and along Abbott Street right in front of City Park. And inside Kelowna's Chinatown, there were several different businesses and stores and places where people could rent rooms. Now, in a community like Kelowna's Chinatown, there were very few women. Said it was mostly men that came over during the gold rush era. And when there are very few women, there are very few babies born. Now, the first baby to be born in Kelowna's Chinatown was born on February 2nd, 1906, and that little girl was named Kelowna Lee. Su Li Ping Wong was one of the few women in Kelowna's Chinatown. She came over from China, she married, she had 9 children, it's a lot of kids, and her husband owned a general store in Kelowna's Chinatown. Now, he had a general store, she was very entrepreneurial and hardworking. I wonder if their general store looked something like the recreation in the Okanagan Heritage Museum. So I spy, with my little eye, something in our general store that looks like something that you have at home. Let's take a peek in the first window. Now, Su Li Ping Wong had 9 children to support, and she worked very, very hard. I imagine that even though she was insistent that her children finish their education, that was very important to her, she probably still had them doing chores and helping out around the house. And some of that helping out was probably running errands. So I imagine that some of her kids would have to go to some of the different stores and shops around Chinatown buying household supplies. Now I spy, with my little eye, something in this store that's something that we would see in a store today. It might not look exactly the same. Most of the men in Kelowna's Chinatown had to leave their families back in China, and many of these families were never reunited. So how did the families stay connected? Well, they wrote letters back and forth. And the Kelowna Public Archives has some of the letters that the family members were writing. I'm going to read part of a letter for you today. So this is, of course, a copy. The real letter is being safely stored down in the archives. Now, are you impressed that I can read Chinese? I can. It's translated on the back. Now, this was written by an elderly father who stayed in China and had sent one of his sons to Canada, or to Gam San, hoping to be able to send money back to the family. And here's what he wrote. Kai Tao, my son, I have received the registered letter you sent with the money order inside, which is worth 50 yen and is being used for household expenses. I just wish that you could make your fortune soon, pack up, come home, and just enjoy family life again. When you are overseas, you should always remember that your deceased mother told you, do not just have fun, but bring money home. Now I am old. I cannot do so much, so you must send a lot of money home for household expenses. I am now too old. I cannot write too much. I hope you will have good fortune. October 26, 1937, your father, Chong Hung. So there's a very clear theme in this letter and lots of those letters that were being sent back and forth. And that was, please send money home to China. Your family needs you. Now these men, I imagine, they must have been quite lonely. In Kelowna's Chinatown, they would have, out of necessity, built friendships. There were also different clubs that they could be a part of to help with some of that loneliness. So with that in mind, our next I Spy, with my little eye, something for fun and entertainment. Come on this way. Let's have a peek inside. Something for fun and entertainment. During the Spanish flu epidemic of 1918, Kelowna's Chinatown was quarantined. People were not allowed in or out, and a makeshift hospital was created out of one of the buildings there. Something from that hospital was salvaged and brought into the museum. So this I Spy is a little bit different. I spy, with my little eye, something from the Chinatown Hospital. This flight of stairs was used in this makeshift hospital during the Spanish flu epidemic. And many years later, it was brought into the Okanagan Heritage Museum. And when you look closely, you can see the left-right pattern on the stairs of patients going up and down to visit the doctor. Su Li Ping Wong worked hard to support her family. And there was something that she made that nobody else in the area made. And she sold it for the family income. She would wake up at 4 in the morning to start the process of making this item. What was this item that she made and sold? Something that's fairly common in a traditional Chinese diet. What do you think? Well, it's tofu. She would wake up early in the morning to start grinding the soybeans to make tofu. And why didn't more people in this area make tofu? At the height of Kelowna's Chinatown, there were 500 people living there. Well, not everybody brought their tofu maker over from China. And here at the Heritage Museum, we have Mrs. Wong's tofu maker. And when you see it, you can understand why everybody didn't bring one over from China. I don't know how heavy it is, but I don't think I could lift it. So the soaked soybeans would be put into the hole in the top. There's a space here for a wooden handle to spin the top. There's also an adjustment that could be made to have this turned into kind of an electric wheel. The soaked beans would then be ground up and would come out the side here, fill into the trough and down into the bucket. Su Li Ping Wong was an important part of the community of Kelownas Chinatown, and she's well known for how she helped others. Now her story and the stories from her family and everybody else who lived in Kelownas Chinatown make up the rich history of Kelowna's past.